board vacancy, Monday, March 25th, 6:30 p.m. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call.
Mr. Borthwick?
Present.
Mr. Duffy?
Present.
Mr. Martin? Present. Mr. Rush? Mr. McAndrew? Mr. Vogel? Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Mrs. Dixon?
Present.
8 present.
And now we need the purpose of the meeting. Do you know?
Yeah, I just sent it to you.
You sent it to me?
Yeah.
They call it silence.
I'm
don't
sorry.
you? The meeting announcement was advertised. The Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton is seeking applicants to fill a vacancy. Interested parties should email a resume and completed application to Board Secretary, 425 North Washington Avenue. Do I have to read all this or just the bottom part of it?
I think just,
The bottom?
Just the bottom.
Okay, I didn't think I ever read all this. Okay. A special meeting for the specific purpose of the board vacancy will be held on Monday, March 25th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 425 North Washington Avenue, Scranton, PA 18503. The scheduled work session will take place following the special meeting. And it was time for public comment. Nobody signed up for public comment this evening. And now, are we going to do the same thing we did last time, Mr. Attorney Audi? We're gonna put all the candidates. We have 4 candidates that can go in the,
Absolutely, let's follow the same procedure.
so if we can have our 4 candidates, Virginia, Ms. Orr will take you into the room.
Sorry about that. Here it is.
Okay, Attorney Audi, so we could go through the procedure again in the process. I know we just did this, but just so we're all clear on this, we have 4 candidates for this evening. Each of them will come out and speak individually, and then the board will be writing 1 name down. We have 4. 1 name down, and then we'll be making a motion on the member that has the most
The
times
most-
their name is
Yes,
down
correct.
first
That's
by
right.
the entire board.
Correct,
And we'll keep going till we get a board member.
that's right.
Got it.
We're getting this down.
We're getting this down. So our first one, are we going in this order, the way you have them written on this paper?
I'm gonna go in the order they signed in, if that's okay?
Okay, that's perfect.
Daniel Russ.
Hello, Daniel.
Hi.
And how many minutes do they have?
2.
You have 2 minutes to address the board,
Okay.
and then I don't know, we didn't ask about the questions, though, did we?
I have 2 questions.
You have 2? Anybody else have a question?
I have one.
You have 1?
Ask a question.
Okay, so we have Mr. Duffy, Mr. Martin, and Mr. Borthwick will be asking a question after you're done.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
So, good evening, thanks for having me. My name's Daniel, I'm a clinical pharmacy specialist at the Wilkes-Barre VA Medical Center in Plains. I am a recent high school graduate, less than 10 years ago. I graduated from Holy Cross in Dunmore. I think I understand well the struggles that children face today in our school system. I have secondhand experience with the struggle that faculty, staff face as well. My brother grew up in Scranton, he's a teacher, so I do have some experience with that. I'm primarily interested in being on the facility, and I think I would bring a strong ethical background as well. Basically just bring new blood. I think it's definitely time for to get some new blood on the board, and I think I can kind of assist in decision making there. With my position, I teach residents, postgraduate residents and students who are interested in pursuing further education. So I personally have experience with teaching. I think that, the foundation starts at the earliest levels, and if it's done right, people will want to pursue higher education. I have a doctorate from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, so I understand well the importance of education. I think, it starts right here at the earliest level, so. Any questions?
Thank you. Director Duffy?
Thank you very much for showing up tonight and applying. I have two questions. First question is, what is the annual budget of the Scranton School District? Please include all federal, state, and local revenue.
I'm not sure any numbers.
Second question, what is the largest financial shortcoming the Scranton School District faces?
I'm not sure.
Director Gilmore?
As we embark on our recovery efforts here, we will be reviewing the plan that Dr. Feynman prepares, and we will be faced with a lot of very difficult choices. Are there any points you would absolutely not consider? I guess in other words, do you have a deal breaker?
No, I don't. I think that's one of the big things too. I don't have any bias or prior influences, so I think that would kind of help. There are no deal breakers for me.
Do you have any specific policy priorities or ideas related to addressing our fiscal crisis?
Like I said, I think focus on ethics is important. That's one of the most important things to me. That's why I'm on the committee at work, making decisions for not only the interest of the board, obviously, but for all the key stakeholders that are involved. The students, the faculty, staff.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Hello,
Hi,
Mr.
there.
Norton, you have 2 minutes to address the board. You know the drill, you've been here before.
Yes, I have.
Director Duffy, Director Gilmartin, and Director Borthwick will ask you a question after you're done.
Just interested in seeing if I can help. Got two grandkids that are over at Willard, 5th, and one that'll be going into kindergarten. The reason I'm looking for the short duration is to go ahead and just hope to make sure it's a smooth transition into next year without any drastic knee-jerk reactions to everything. I've been involved with kids for quite a few years, still involved. Lifelong resident over on the west side, my kids came through the schools. I came through the schools, firm believer in Voltech. I believe that our upper grade kids need to be exposed to the trades, because obviously Amazon isn't coming, you know what I mean? So, in order to go ahead and build the area, we'd have to go ahead and we'd have to help the kids along to go ahead and have a good working group. So, short and sweet, that's kind of it. So, whoever.
Mr. Norton, I have two questions for you. Thank you very much, first off, for being here tonight. First question is, what is the annual budget of the Scranton School District? Please include all federal, state, and local revenue.
That I can't answer.
Okay, second question, what is the largest financial shortcoming the Scranton School District faces?
The largest financial shortcoming? Well, if you're listening to Mr. DePasquale, already says you're at $200 million to give you the actual breakdown on that. I don't have it. that is a little bit of, I would be more interested in seeing how the kids are actually broke down into dollars and cents than to see the maintenance area. What is the kid actually, what does the kid actually cost in comparison with all the other stuff that helps? That's the only way I can answer that. I don't know the actual numbers.
Thank you.
Dr. Kumar?
As we move into our next phase of the recovery process and get the findings of Dr. Feinman's plan and assess all of those choices, we'll be making very difficult decisions, I'm sure, and facing a lot of choices. Is there any point you would not consider, essentially, in other words, do you have to work?
You would have to consider all options. My biggest concern, and the main reason I'm here, is the disruption of the kids. Every year is important. My granddaughter is going to be going into 5th grade next year. I may have said she's in 5th, she's in 4th. She'll be going into 5th grade next year. And there's already been talk whether you folks are thinking about shifting schools. Well, that goes ahead and that relates to my granddaughter right from the get-go. So it becomes a case of how it's going to disrupt the kids. And that's pretty much where I'm at. Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any specific policy priorities or ideas when it comes to addressing our fiscal crisis? Any specifics?
Do I have any,
Specific.
my thought on it right now is 5.5 hours, 6 hours for teaching kids is a rather short period of time. If everybody is as diverse as we are diverse, that, there's no doubt about that. I am a believer that I would like to see if outside the school district, but running parallel with the school district, that we could go ahead and get some programs set up. And I'd also like to see if there's any way that summertime or summer school kind of programs could be set up so kids could go ahead and get an idea what Voltech, okay? Because I was lucky enough to be able to go to my dad's garage. I became a mechanic, you know what I mean? Kids don't have that right now. Kids are told to go to college. So they don't have the knowledge of getting out and working with their hands a lot. So they're the only two things that I can go ahead and say right now that I'd be interested in outside of looking, outside of getting more knowledge. So,
Thank you, Mr.
thank
Jordan.
you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Scranton School Board and District Administration, as well as others in attendance. It's Sarah again, I'm back. As you probably know by now, I am one determined woman. This is my 3rd time standing before the board in almost 5 months. You've seen me twice, this is the first time seeing me. I did not apply for this position this month, last month, or in November, because I am bored, or because it looks good on my resume, or to have my name and face in the paper. I applied and have remained engaged by attending work sessions and board meetings, because I am not a quitter. I do not give up. Not when it comes to education, not mine or that of the 10,000 plus students within the district. This fighting spirit was instilled in me as a little girl and has never left me. I knew that education was the way up and out. Yes, there were times it was challenging, and it would have been easier to throw the towel. But I knew that for me, the youngest daughter of an immigrant, failure was not an option. This is where we are right now. I don't have to tell you what's going on. You know, I know, we all know. There are a lot of negative people who are saying to just give up. This is why this position is so important to me, because education is so important to me. The same passion, tenacity, and love that I have for my own education, I will have for the students of this district, and I really do. I will do that by working alongside all of you, respecting as people and as colleagues, by working to find ways to alleviate the current burdens of the district, as well as heeding the forthcoming recommendations of Dr. Finan and the Financial Recovery Advisory Committee. I will help the district regain financial solvency, continue the efforts of transparency, and restore the trust and dignity that Scranton taxpayers are desperately seeking. It is an honor and a privilege to speak before you tonight, and I thank you for this great opportunity.
Sarah, I have two questions. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it as I always have. First one is, what is the annual budget of the Scranton School District, including all state, federal, and local revenue?
I'm sure.
Secondly, what is the largest financial shortcoming the Scranton School District faces?
You mean what is the largest financial burden, or you?
Well, it's interesting that you use that word, because I struggle with it as well. What is one thing that the Scranton School District could receive or fix financially in order to make us more solvent?
So there's a lot of answers that could be given to this, and depending. So right now, what we could do is we could lobby and advocate for a more equitable financial funding formula with legislators in Harrisburg. Because that will, in the present and for the future, bring us more money to restore art, library education, music. But if I may say that 2 weeks ago when the Auditor General came in, he did say that if we look into potentially doing away with the bus contract, that could bring immediate financial increase into the district by millions of dollars. So I think if we look at the legalities of that, and if that is possible to do, I think that's also an option, as well as legislating.
Thank you.
Sarah will be considering, as you mentioned, Dr. Finan's recovery plan very soon. We'll be showing those findings. Is there any option that you would not consider? In other words, do you have any deal breakers?
You mean like what the financial recovery committee would?
Anything they might propose, is there anything that you would absolutely not put on the table?
I wouldn't agree to closing schools, because I think on paper you could say, oh, let's close schools, that saves money, let's consolidate, but then that will also mean having to transport those students, which will increase that already stressed budget, and could be other issues, as well as laying off other employees, even if they're leaving some early hours.
Do you have any specific policy priorities or ideas when it comes to addressing our financial crisis?
I think keeping better track of the money that's coming in, where it's going, how it's being utilized. I think those should be clear, like keeping track of every penny, every dollar that's coming into the district. Making sure that everybody who is receiving money from the district is actually employed by the district. And Does that answer your
Thank you,
question?
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. Okay, I think my name's Rose Hugh. I'm a grandmother. I've been here in Scranton for 7 years. I'm a volunteer and I stand before the board really as an advocate for the kids. Why am I applying? I care about our city and our community, and they can only thrive with a healthy school district. And that's what I want to do. I guess most of you know I stand up at school meetings and talk, and talk, and talk, and talk. But one of the things I've realised is standing on the sidelines offering opinions is easy. Standing up and trying to take responsibility and being part of the process and being part of the game to fix things is what you need to do. And I think that it's easy to talk. I'd rather be part of the solution and get there. We know we've got problems. Hopefully we're going to be able to help move towards a future with the financial recovery plan. And how we got here, I don't think should be our focus at all. I don't think it's anything to do with what we should be working on. There are enough people out there yapping and tipping and doing that. The board's focus, I really believe, should be where do we go from here? What's the best way we can move forward? What's the best thing for the kids? The only question I believe that focus at the moment is how do we move forward and get out of here? What do I bring to the board? What I really want to do is a commitment to listen, to learn what it is. Outside, we don't know that. It's very easy to talk, but we don't know what you guys know, the information. And you have to learn. And I think the commitment is to come on, to listen, to learn, to study, to read what can be read. The most important thing the board has to do to me is have the courage to help make the considered decisions that will bring the kids forward, bring the school district forward, take us eventually back to health. We're not dead yet, we're not looking great, but we're getting there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we could just wrap up and.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realise there was time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
There's been a lot of turnover in the board in the last few months. It's difficult for you guys, it's difficult for the public. The last thing I would say is that please give consideration to appointing someone who's going to be here after the election. There are 6 places up at the election, there'll be at least 3 new faces, and I believe that it's in the best interest of continuity for the district and the board. I would love it to be me, I'm standing for the election. If not me, one of the other candidates who will be here through that, so that there won't be quite that big jolt after the election, and there'll be some continuity. And I'm sorry.
Ms. Hume, thank you very much for coming here tonight, very much appreciated. I have 2 questions for you. First one being, what is the annual budget of the Scranton School District? Please include all federal, state, and local revenue.
That I could not answer you, and I would hate to give you a misleading one. I have not had access to the budget. There have been reports in the newspaper of the general overall budget. You're right, I should have studied that up, but I would rather than mislead you, I will pass.
I appreciate that. Second question, what is the largest financial shortcoming the Scranton School District faces?
I believe that the thing that we should be pursuing, which unfortunately failed with the Erie financial recovery plan, is that given the size of our district, given the economic makeup of the district, we are being shortfall probably between $2,200 and $2,300 per student per year from the state. And I believe that while that's a public commitment thing, it has to go through the legislation, we have to work on that. We have to get the public behind, not, lobbying everybody and their cat. It's not, it is the big one. Unfortunately, because of the PEDE's decision about the Erie Financial Recovery Plan last week, that's not going to be our silver bullet. So where I think we need to be looking, we've taken the low-hanging fruit. I think that the board's done a great job in the last few years with budget shortfalls of finding what savings they can. I think that we need to look at some more radical solutions, always with the priority that the kids come first, and what we've got to do is protect the interests for the majority of the children. And that's not very specific, quite deliberately, because I don't know enough.
No, thank you very much.
I was enthralled with your answer. Excuse me. We will be assessing Dr. Fine's recovery plan shortly.
Yeah.
As we weigh these pros and cons and make these very difficult choices. Are there any options that you absolutely would not consider, which is to say, do you have any deal breakers?
No. And the reason I say that is, it's impossible to make a decision about something you know nothing about. I can see there are things that I would probably kick, scream and grit my teeth about, but if that was the only thing, that way that was forward, and it was after discussion, and I have great faith in Dr. Feynman, great faith in the recovery committee, I do not think they would be putting forward frivolously anything that wasn't essential. It doesn't mean that at some point I wouldn't vote against something, but at this particular point, I don't have the knowledge to be able to say that I wouldn't, because I don't know enough.
Thank you.
Do you have any specific policy priorities or ideas when it comes to addressing our fiscal crisis?
Again, no, I would not be prepared to do that. I do believe, I think that it would be foolish of me to stand up here and try and tell you guys stuff that I think you already know. The thing I do believe we really, really, really need to look at and concentrate on is, how do we get our state legislators, our federal legislators, our city legislators, our ward chairmen, our to get to go to put pressure on the people to give us that funding. Because that is over $20 million, which is a big chunk of our shortfall. I think it's 24 million, something, the shortfall. And if we could squeeze that, and I think it's justified. I think our students are worth the same amount of money. Why should our children be worth less than a child in Pittsburgh or a child in Philly? But I think that we could possibly look at putting that pressure on. But apart from that, my biggest thing is that the cuts we make, I think the first template that should be applied on them is how hard we make it for children, and they should be ranked that way.
Thank you.
I'm actually stubborn.
Are you giving us a paper? I don't remember. I'm not sure remember. This paper. Oh, that's right, we're circling, right?
Is that whatever you'd like to do?
And sign, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Putting one down?
We need one.
One.
Mrs. Dixon? Mrs. Dixon, Mr. Janalek is not here. I'd like to suggest that Pat Laffey assist Virginia.
That's fine.
Sarah's here? Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, we've always had that, right?
Gosh, we picked. Thanks, appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I said it.
And we tell the results and then we'll grab first and vote on that.
First,
Did they?
so the first person we're gonna be voting on, we're gonna put a motion on the floor for Mr. Norton. May I have the motion for Mr. Norton?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Borthwick?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
No.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Lesh?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Kopel?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
7 affirmative, 1 negative. Motion passes.
So do we bring everybody in, thank you? No, we have to.
I filled it out, you just have to sign it.
That's fine. I'll use it.
I know I speak on behalf of the board for thanking all of you for stepping up to the plate here in our time of need for a vacant seat. We've had quite a few of those recently in the last few months, but the consensus of the board, with the most votes was for Mr. Norton. So I congratulate you, and please, those of you that are running for office, we wish you great luck, and those of you that have come, and if we need you again, I hope you come back. So, thank you. So will we adjourn the meeting? Mr. Norton, you're gonna get sworn in, and you're gonna participate in our work session.
Okay.
Mr. Norton, you can step up here. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. You raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and that you will discharge the duties of your office with fidelity? Okay, thank you. Congratulations again.
Mr. Norton, you'll be joining us here.
Okay. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'd like to call to order the work session on Monday, March 25th. We should do a roll call again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to.
Here we go.
We don't have to stand for the pledge, then, do we?
No.
Roll call?
Mr.
I'm
Borthwick?
sorry, Virginia.
Present.
That's okay. No, Mr. Duffy?
Present.
Ms. Martin?
Present.
Mr. Lush?
Here.
Mr. McAndrew?
Present?
Mr. Norton?
Here.
Mr. Pople?
Present.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Mrs. Dixon?
Present.
9 present.
Should we get a packet from Mr. Paul?
I have one.
Thank you.
Mr. Pople, Budget and Finance. I think I don't know if anybody else took notice. Thank you, Dr. Curian and your staff in Virginia for trying to break down this agenda to fit within our new guidelines for our committees. It breaks it out a little easier, it's much better. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Aside from the consent, we'll have a presentation for the recovery officer update and a resolution to approve the order of correction.
Dr. Fryman, are you ready to provide your update?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Don't stand, actually, yes.
Sure.
I just wanted to give you an update. We did have our first advisory committee meeting a couple weeks ago. We have our next advisory committee meeting on April 3rd from 6 o'clock to around 7:30, 8 o'clock, whenever we can get the work done. We do have a website where anyone from the community can add suggestions to the committee for our recovery process. We have had 54 responses to date. Of those responses, and I wanted to review a few of those with you, many were not cost savings, but they were ideas to share, and I think they're equally as important. For example, some folks might like this, a 4-day work week. They believe that that would be a cost savings measure. All of these cost savings ideas will be calculated, and we will have that as part of our plan, because I think the voices need to be part of our plan as we put it together. They also had a lot of interest in, there was a lot of interest in how much you all get paid. And I would like to tell the public that you don't get paid, you give up your time voluntarily, but they would like to cut you down to 5. I'm not sure why, but just so you know, that was pretty interesting. Some of the real serious suggestions were put light sensors in rooms to turn off the lights when people leave as a cost savings measure. Want to privatize sports. There were lots of suggestions of closing of schools, different schools, all different types of elementary, no middle schools, but close West Scranton, eliminate the need for 2 teams. I will tell you, you don't have the room in one building for all your high school students at this time. All sorts of ideas about charging activity fees, participation fees. Everyone, many responses about bring band back, bring the library back. Some issues about proving residency. There's several responses about people who don't live in the city of Scranton coming to school here. So that would be something of interest. Do we have a purchasing manager? We want to bid everything, bid everything, get the best price, do an RFP for bus transportation, current review of the tax collectors, and the collection rate, could we improve upon that? And then a lot of information about teacher contracts. Everybody wants to see fair wages for teachers, and would like to try to understand how we can do that when we're in recovery. There's a lot of information about closing the administrative building and selling that, closing Whittier Annex, selling that, or returning that to its owner. And a lot of conversation about meeting the needs of children with regard to special ed, and a lot of information about being careful about lawsuits and settlements, and whatever we can do to avoid those is a suggestion. They also would like you to meet on during the months of January and August, but you can be off in July, just so you know. That's really a pretty large view. Oh, hire a grant writer. There were also a lot of ideas about hiring people, but hiring a grant writer and billing services for OT and PT, which I know we already do, so some of this we already do. Are there questions? We are still taking input on that website, and as we have our next meeting, we will be discussing in great length the areas that I talked about, the educational improvement area, governance and leadership area. We'll be talking about facilities. We'll be putting options with cost estimates on the table. So we'll have a lot to do at the very next meeting. Other questions?
April 3rd is still the next meeting for you folks?
At 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Same room, second floor, this
I
building.
just wanted to go ahead and make sure it was still there.
Same one. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Appreciate it.
Simon. Okay, are you gonna go through the rest of the bill list and stuff? For the bill list?
These are under consent, the resolution to approve the bill list, a resolution to approve exception for the bill list, a resolution to approve delinquent tax reports, a resolution to approve the treasurer's report, a resolution to approve the repository sales, and a discussion of budget transfers.
Is that you, Mr. Lockwood?
Yes, we have a few areas that we'll be presenting to you. They are areas that we've determined that we have excess of budgetary dollars in, and areas that we need transfers to. One of them is related to our IT replacement equipment line items. We were gonna bring forward to a transfer to stay within the IT category, but to take it out of our equipment area and put it into a purchase service, professional purchase service area. Another one is related to our IU support services. We determined that there's an excess there based off of what our next basic ed deduction will be. We would like to make a transfer into our psychologist function to allow the department to purchase testing materials. And there's going to be a transfer from our 1,100 salaries to our 2,200 support service salaries to support professional development. They were budgeted areas, it's just we need to correct the function code.
Right now with IT, what was the budget surplus there that we're transferring on?
The budget contained a significant amount of money related to replacement equipment and new equipment. And working with the IT department, Dr. Kieran, also Kevin Williams from the IU, we've come up with a plan as to what we'll be utilizing some of those dollars for, possibly replacement projectors. There is a need potentially for a textbook management system, which would allow us to transfer money out of the equipment account into that purchase services to accomplish that goal.
I'm not against any of that stuff. When it comes to IT, is it around every 5 years that the district is looking to upgrade? Do you know that information?
I know that
Give or take.
information, that's the cycle. We have not developed our cycle yet, we're working with our IT staff and Kevin to help us do that. But that is pretty much the life of a piece of technology. So as Pat said, we know that there are some things that we definitely have to replace. And all along, we've been replacing iPads with Chromebooks. So we're in a good place as far as that is concerned. But we know that there are other things, and we are going to be looking at that with Kevin's help.
And then with the LERTA correction, what's the correction with the LERTA?
The correction with the LERTA, Mr.
Oh, I'm
Lottie,
sorry.
are you ready to discuss that now, or would you prefer to do that at
The correction was that it was, I believe it was for a non-public, and they had to change that. So all of the county, the city, everybody was involved, had to change it. And we have an amendment that just amends it to the proper municipality. But I could get more specific if I have, I don't have it.
I think it's in their
Oh,
packet.
you have it.
Yeah, it's in your packet.
non-permissible. Is what they're removing due to a code.
Yeah, any exemption made permissible under this ordinance shall not be applied to any industrial, commercial, or business property, and they would have to change that out, because that was not appropriate for this district.
And that was the council, so did the city already pass it?
Yes, it's out, we're the last ones up to pass it.
I wanted to go back to something Mr. Laffey talked to you about with the budget transfers. We do have a textbook management system already in place. And we're going to get full utilization of that and account for all of the books in the district and have a process for doing that. So that's why we need additional funds to be transferred from the equipment line to the professional service line.
Okay,
Can I ask a question on IT while we're there? I know one of the biggest concerns was because of the program, and when the merging took place, there were errors. And we heard about all those errors, and you're in the process of looking for a new system.
There are several things going on now. I know that you requested that we might consider a presentation tonight. I spoke to the staff working on this. Now, you know Megan Barrett is in that area. And I have on temporary assignment one of our principals working from the school standpoint. They will be ready at the next work session to make a presentation to you about transcripts and grades and about moving forward with a new system.
Okay.
There's also other pieces we're looking at, and that is attendance. They won't be ready for that piece at the next work session, but they will be ready to talk about transcripts and grades.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
okay, the last two items under my committee, there'll be a resolution to award delinquent real estate tax sales and a resolution for tax assessment agreements. That's it for the budget and finance.
Thank you. Community Relations, Director Duffy.
Thank you. Under intergovernmental, I know it's not on here, but I just wanted to give a quick update. I did notice an article in the Scranton Times that mentioned Erie coming back to, the state coming back to Erie with regard to the specific provisions and not meeting some of the requirements that were needed to move forward with recovery. So I wanted to check into that. So I reached out to Bob Mursky, who's the former equivalent of Mrs. Boland. He's their former union president. He's also a former Erie City Councilman, and now he's a state rep out in Erie. He was very involved in all of this, and I've kind of been reaching out to him over the past few years, along with some of their former superintendents who aren't there anymore, and just trying to get a sense for exactly what happened. The first thing I wanted to say is this comes after, and I have the March 7th, 2018 post from GoErie.com, where it says in the very first sentence, state approves $14 million payment for Erie School District. The receipt of this money is to arrive on March 14th, 2018, and will trigger a state budget provision that will boost the district's state funding by $14 million from now on. So the discrepancy, the difference between Erie and Scranton, and I have a lot more information that we're going to be going out to the school districts. Every single PTA meeting, we've reached out and spoke to every single PTA president. We've done a lot of work working on a PowerPoint presentation to get the actual information out as to what exactly is going on. So Erie received a $14 million provision that would boost their state funding by $14 million every single year for eternity. So this fact that it's a pie in the sky, everyone says, oh, there's no silver bullet, that's because it's a gold bullet. It's not just a silver bullet, it's a gold bullet. This is exactly what we need. This is exactly the main thing we should be working on, and it's going to make Dr. Fine's work a lot easier, although I'm sure there's more hard decisions that are coming up. This is what other places have done. This is what they've been successful. This is the reason we got $2 million 2 years ago when we said we couldn't do it, and $6 million last year when no one said we could do it. To say that we're going to be putting the pressure on, I've taken about 5 or 6 days off of work next month. I'm going to be at every single one of these meetings. So everyone talks about, oh, you need to meet more. I'll meet more. We've met more. I think we met 53 times last year. I tried to count. So give me a break. We're gonna meet about 20 times, I think, next month, and we're gonna get this word out. And anything that anybody could do to help me, anyone that has an idea, anyone that wants me to go somewhere and talk with a different group of people, I don't care if it's at a neighborhood, I don't care if it's at a person's house, but everybody will know about this. I raised those questions to both times recently, to all of the candidates, and even the candidates don't know exactly. And to know the budget exactly, I didn't expect anyone to know that answer, but I would hope someone would say 150, 160, 170. But a few people did touch on the fact that fair funding is the most important thing. And it is without question, and nothing's even close. So our focus has to be on this and other things that are going to come along with it to garner us more money in the short term, and a lot of things that Dr. Feinman's going to be working on. But to say that we're in the exact same place as Erie, we are when it comes to our students don't get anything. But Erie's gotten an extra $14 million recurrent. We haven't. That's the big difference between us and them, and that's the big difference between everybody else. And I have this slide that all of you are going to see, and you're going to get sick of seeing, that shows all the inner city school districts, what they get, their average daily membership, their proposed 1920 budget, and their per pupil funding. So everyone's going to get sick of seeing this, but I'm telling you, you're all going to see it. That's all I have on that. And public relations, there's a presentation for PA Schools Work, which goes hand in hand with a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about.
Gil Martin, are you gonna segue into?
Absolutely. I don't believe that our representatives from PA Schools Work will be with us at the next meeting, but we are scheduling something hopefully for the upcoming month. We've talked about a few potential dates, and we do have a legislative breakfast
April
on
3rd.
the agenda for April 3rd. We'll be reaching out to our local legislators, those whom Mr. Duffy has been working with for many years. Our newest state representative, she's coming. So we'll be driving that point home and hopefully learning from them what they need all of us to do to help them make their case, to advocate on our behalf. So whether it's letters, phone calls, visits, whatever it is they need from us, and by extension, all of you, we'll be learning about that, and then in turn, we'll have hopefully someone from PA Schools Work come and help us facilitate that conversation with the public and all of the stakeholders to really drive that point home and continue the work Mr. Duffy's been doing.
And I want to thank everyone on the board for their help. Mr. Popel has helped me a lot. Mrs. Dixon and Mr. Mr. Borth, we've spent hours getting this ready. Ms. Gil Martin for helping me reach out to everybody and PA Schools Work. I'd like to thank Mr. McAndrew for attending the PA Schools Work. I mean, this is an effort that I've been concentrating on, but now it seems like the whole board is starting to work in unison to try to get this together, and that's where I think you're going to start to see the shift and the change.
Thank you, Director Duffy. Well, education would be Mr. Norton. I don't know if you want to jump in tonight since he just sat in the seat.
I could give him a little help. That's a hot seat to be in if you don't mind.
You're chair of the education committee, Mr. Norton.
Oh, okay. So if you wanted to read off, sure.
You could just read
Read
off,
off whatever's in that box.
under education, just read that box.
Where we at here?
Left-hand side, third down.
We have a title program and the presentation for the title program, the attorney audit. Resolution for the approved permission to attend contest.
That's on the consent agenda.
It's a little blurry on ours.
Okay, sorry about that. Resolution to approve the school calendar, changes due to the inclement weather. And then we have the equity plan, whatever, I really don't know.
It's in your packet, but you don't have to worry about it tonight. We'll be
Yeah, well,
presenting
Once
that.
he reads
I was
through
hoping I
this,
could
we'll
go
go
ahead and
back
read
to the
it.
presentation and the discussion.
We'll give you some time there.
Okay, then we're discussion and resolution of the CTC budget.
So,
That would be the Career Technical Center,
right.
just going ahead and saying. Love to get involved in that, so I really don't know where that's at, but it's pretty much what I know.
We have one more that was missed, the approval
Oh,
of,
excuse me, yeah, the
resolution.
approval of SB 34 and HB 526.
thank you, Mr. Norton, didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it was,
We're gonna start with the presentation.
There are, House Bill, or Senate Bill 34 and House Bill 526 is in your packet.
Right.
So you'll
And an email came through from PSBA today. I think it was the one that comes to all of us, not the liaison one, but there is more information, further explanation of those two bills on their website.
And the CTC budget is in there. You do not have the updated calendar yet. You will receive that prior to the next meeting.
Mr. Rowdy, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, I have been asked to review and talk about the pre-K program that we have here at the district and the Title I funding and whether or not we're in compliance, and if we are not in compliance, how we can get into compliance. So that's what I've done. I've done that through a series of my own research into the laws and regulations, through consulting with the experts in the PFM and the Department of Education. So with that, we put together a little PowerPoint to go through that whole process and whether or not we're in compliance. And I have not good news for you, we're not in compliance. And I'm going to put the PowerPoint on now and go through it and try to explain to you where it is. I'm not sure where it is. Oh, that's great.
Mr. Rowdy, before you get started, are we
Yes.
going to get a copy of this PowerPoint? Or do I have to take lots of notes?
No, you'll get a copy. You will get a copy of it. So, to give you the bad news first, the district's current, are we okay? Everybody? Okay. The district's current pre-K program is not in compliance, as I mentioned, with the federal guidance and the state regulations. And I'm just gonna tell you in a nutshell, I'm gonna skip around a little bit. I believe that, when the district has a choice of doing a school-wide pre-K program, an entire school district-wide pre-K program, or targeted assistance, which is essentially what we are doing, when you do that, you absolutely have to have eligibility criteria, and we don't have that. So with that in mind, I'll go through what the consequences can be. I know that the district was cited the last time. There was a monitoring session with over 40 citations. I'm very concerned, and I believe that we have good reason to believe that if we continue on this path as we are right now, and we go forward and don't have the appropriate either eligibility requirements for doing it the way we're doing it, or looking at other options that are out there, which we'll get to at the end of the program, we're going to jeopardize our $6 million Title I funding, and certainly nobody wants that. So, what we currently do right now is we set aside approximately $2 million annually to run a district-operated program for pre-K. And that serves less than 50% of the incoming kindergarten class. Existing federal funds are not sufficient to operate the program for all students, giving other priorities for Title I monies. So here again, we're taking the money and without any eligibility requirements at all, we're earmarking it for certain students over other students. And that's just completely in violation of the federal regulations. So under the law that sets us forth, Every Student Succeeds Acts, the federal government publishes non-regulatory guidance, which is what I'm referring to when I said I looked at the guidance and the regulations. Title I preschool programs are intended to assist children most at risk of failing to meet the state's challenging academic standards on a multiple educationally related objective criteria. That's in red, and that's in red because that's where we are failing. That's not what we're doing. Scranton currently uses a screening tool to test for pre-K readiness, but then we don't use that in its selection criteria for students or to develop classroom rosters. So while we're testing the kids for their, just an assessment, we're not utilizing that in any way to determine their eligibility needs or getting some kind of standardized objective requirements of who gets the service of that federal funding. As I said, we're not applying any sort of eligibility criteria, accepting all children. This is very important, the second bullet here. Accepting all children or accepting them on a first-come, first-served basis is simply not allowable under Title I targeted assistance or school-wide rules. Can't do that. And I understand from having conversations with administrators and actually sitting through board meetings, I believe that we're not following that policy at all. Children, they have to be identified based on a selection criteria that's set forth in the regulation. Therefore, you know, for example, and I think a good way to start this, or an option, I'm not saying this is absolutely required, but a good roll-off is to limit enrollment to 6 months prior to being admitted to the pre-K program would be, for example, an allowable first step in establishing a reasonable and necessary eligibility requirement. I've heard tale of people registering their children or to-be children before they're even born. And that's just, you know, we're using public funding. So we have to make sure that the goals of Title I are met, which are to help children succeed who couldn't otherwise succeed, and also do it in a fair and objective criteria. So, certain children are automatically eligible for a pre-K program if we have one. These are children, again, these are the children who need the help in order to succeed. Children who attend Head Start programs, they're automatically eligible. Children who receive services under migrant education provisions. Children experiencing homelessness under the McKinney-Vento Act. Children who are in a local institution, neglected and privileged. Now, again, they're eligible. It doesn't mean they're automatically enrolled, but it means that's a part of their eligibility requirements. So, the district operated, this is the definition of district operated, a portion of the district, an LEA, which of course is Scranton, may serve preschool children who reside in specific Title I attendance areas. And that's its highest poverty school attendance area. So, from my understanding of this school district, all of the pre-Ks are part of the Title I, are Title I specific, but it's not a district-wide, school-wide program. Therefore, so they're served by some or all the Title I schools if, for example, an LEA does not have sufficient Title I funds to operate a preschool program for a district as a whole. So that part of it, if we're going to do it, and we don't have enough money to do it, that's okay. You can do that. That's allowed. But the Scranton district in doing so has not identified criteria by which it will choose the Title I pre-K schools to serve. Scranton currently offers pre-K in all Title I targeted assistance schools, regardless of its highest poverty school attendance areas. So, again, we're having the money just funneled without any regard to the eligibility needs or the requirements of what the purpose behind the Title I money is for. So we could develop criteria beyond academic needs, for example, enrollment catchment areas or transportation. So they're allowed to be factored in to how you determine which of these pre-K programs can be funded and how you can enroll and staff them. I shouldn't say staff, I should say enroll the rosters of them. That can be considered. So, what's next? What do we do? We now know, I think without question, we're not doing this properly. I think the system probably evolved and nobody paid much attention because it was working. It's a great program that people love. So here's the question. We have to decide how much funding that we want to dedicate to a pre-K program. Some or all of its Title I allocations, that's one option. And we can also transfer other money from other federally funded programs from Title II and Title IV to Title I. We can fund all or part of it with district funds. Now these, we're talking a lot of money here, but these are options. These are concepts that we all have to try to consider. So we have to decide whether to fund, again, pre-K in all elementary schools or just some. So that's a big decision that's going to have to be made. If we decide to have a pre-K program at all, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but these are all of our considerations we have to make. If the district decides to fund just some of the schools, this should be in bold. It will need to establish allowable criteria for which ones will be served. So if you don't do that, then we're out of compliance. That's the key here. It's not me. I silenced my phone. I'm kidding. So the district needs to decide whether we will restrict enrollment to each individual school attendance area or allow open enrollment across Title I pre-K abilities, all of it. And finally, we must decide whether they are serving all the children as in a Title I school-wide program or just some targeted assistance programs. If it's that latter one, if it's the targeted assistance programs, again, I keep saying this is the thing we have to remember. The district must not use established eligibility criteria as described above. And I did fix that in my version, but mine says must. Okay. So what's our options? There's several possibilities, several possible paths. Use Title I funding for K-1 programs. So, okay, we want to use Title I. What do? We can do school-operated, school-wide programs, or targeted assistance programs. So that's the whole thing. District-operated, school versus districts as a whole, or portion of the district. Or we can coordinate with other early childhood programs. So that's an option. We can shift Title I dollars and not use them to K-5, which is the current grade range, or K-12 for instruction. Just an option. Fund pre-K with district funds and use Title I dollars to significantly expand K-5 or K-12 supports. Shift Title I dollars to K-5 or K-12 instruction, thereby eliminating pre-K. So within those paths, there are other options that we would want to consider. Offer a district-wide pre-K using Title I funds, and they're using the allowable transfer of Title II and IV funds to Title I for pre-K programs. That therefore would allow for space and classroom and staff headcount considerations. It would be able to offer pre-K to 4-year-olds only, and in some cases, they may still need to leave specific schools to catchment areas. Or develop criteria beyond the academic need, for example, enrollment, catchment areas, or transportation. So if you're not going to look at the academic need, then you can look at other objective standards. So there's, as you can tell, this is a very complicated set of facts that I'm laying out here, and I'm talking about the second nature. You're probably, looking at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. But what I'm trying to tell you is, the way we're doing it now is not in compliance with the federal regulations. And having just gone through 40 violations, the last monitoring system, if they come back, I think we're going to be hit hard, and I think we really can jeopardize our Title I funding. So I think it's imperative that we come up with a way to be in compliance. And in doing so, we have to decide if we're going to be in compliance, do we want to continue with having them where they're at, the way they're at, and establish the eligibility requirements for it, and make some other decisions? Or do we want to do a full school-wide program, which is a little different than that? Or do we want to potentially take that money and use it for what would be really the state mandated educational requirements that are not, which is not pre-K, K through 5 or K through 12. Now, I'm not there to talk to you about that. I can't make those decisions for you. But really, I guess I'm just here to say we have to do something soon. And we have to work on it. And I'll guide you through it as well as best I can. But I'm truly not the expert in educational programming and such. I just know what the regs say and what we're doing are not in compliance. So I hope I answered some of your questions.
They are coming in May.
So they're
The
coming in May.
monitors will be here in May.
So May's right around the corner.
I have a question. So, you hit a couple times, we need to develop, I'm sorry.
No, I want to get out of, I don't want to be in somebody's way.
All right, you said we need to develop criteria. Where is the criteria that we should be following anyway?
The regulations.
There's gotta be recommended criteria from Title I.
There are. There is. And
Yeah, you currently approved a criteria. It's just that you're not applying it. You do test all of the children for a needs assessment. If you were then to use that data to fill your classrooms, then you would be compliant. It's just that you're not using that in order to select the students to put into the
so
classroom.
that's why when I said you're testing, and you're using it for assessment, but you're not using it for roster.
Well, how were they selected then?
First come, first served, which is not acceptable under the regs.
I have another question. So Dr. Kieran, I asked you about, I don't know, 2 meetings ago, a meeting or 2 meetings ago. For requirements, I asked you if you were making parents bring in W-2s. You never got back. But I heard there was on this.
W-2.
They are.
We did
Sorry,
ask,
Mark.
we did ask for them for a time, they are acceptable as a way of showing, proof of address. But
It's not income-based, like,
at this
as a
time,
requirement,
no.
it should be, right?
At this time, we were not given direction to do that. So,
Well, it's no longer on the website, so I'm confused. Is it?
it's not now.
Why? Because of that, or?
It's not because I think it was confusing people, and I was not given direction to have that be a criteria.
I think if I can speak up right now, Mr. Candor, I think part of the problem is we're in a dilemma. We know we're out of compliance. We're trying to wait until the board makes a decision. It's very hard to run a program when we're out of compliance. There are certain things that we should be implementing that we're not implementing because we're on hold. So to what Molly's stating is, part of this, if we were to go into compliance and go a certain way, they would have to show income. We're not there yet, so that was a mistake that was taken down at this point. That's all I can say at this point in time, but we are in a difficult situation. We're getting monitored May 13th, May 14th. I can't run a program that I know is out of compliance. So I'm gonna have a hard time signing off on anything if the board doesn't make a decision that we do this right.
Dr. Flanagan.
So let me just add something about Title I. Title I is federal funds, as you know. And the federal government doesn't give you a lot of money, doesn't give any school districts a lot of money. What their goal is to help the least able in a community. So title funds are supposed to be used for your poorest children. Poorest from 2 points of view. Poorest from an economic standpoint and poorest in academic standpoint. So that is the whole goal, and that was the initial goal of Title I way back when it was established in the early 70s, and it still continues to be the goal. Your choice of how you academically assess children to place in a program is your choice. You could use the grants as you are using, but you're not using it for placement. But you can choose any kind of academic assessment. But what you can't do is take more able children and educate them using the Title I dollars and not educate those children who are most needy economically and academically. So Title I is really for those who have an economic and academic need. That's why when they talk about catchment areas, you may have a district, you may have a school in your district in a very poor area where you have a lot of children that would qualify. So you may choose to have that where the Title I program is. That's why they give you some options for criteria like in catchment areas or transportation areas. But what you can't do is use Title I dollars and serve first come, first serve, on a first come, first serve basis, which is what you're doing. And that's, and I haven't read all the non-compliance from your last monitoring, but this has arisen now as Missy has said that we need to look at the program as it is. The other piece is you're at risk of losing all federal funds. The government doesn't really like you to not follow their rules 2 years in a row or 2 times in a row. So you can't afford to lose that $6 million. I will just tell you that. So it's, do we change the program up and follow the criteria, or do you not have that program and use those $2 million for the other needs? You have academic needs in your schools that you can use that for. So that's really what your slides came down to. Sorry.
There was also another option that we just did pre-K 4.
Right.
And if we only did that a half a day instead of a full day, that would cut the expenditures down in your title fund by half, which would almost be $1 million. And that $1 million could be used to offset general fund budget costs. So there's a big cost factor in running our own pre-K program. And I think a big decision has to be whether or not you still want to be in that business of running a pre-K program when your finances really don't support that. or whether you want to dedicate your funding to K-5 or K-12. So I think that is really a huge decision, and probably the beginning of the conversation.
Right, but understand if you do a pre-K-4 program, you still have to have the criteria.
Oh,
You
yes.
still, I mean, you still have to follow those
Can
rules.
I ask here, just starting here, it says federal title funds are approximately $6 million. And then you go ahead and it says we're spending Title I funds of $2 million. So the $4 million are part of other programs?
Yes.
Yeah, Title I is 4.9, Title II is about $500,000, then you have your Title III, it's about 300,000.
Where does
Title
the,
IV.
where does the Title I money for the meal allowance come in? Is that part of this?
It's not part of
No.
this.
No.
Okay.
No, that's okay, good question. Totally different.
All
So
right,
if you
thanks.
take up all your Title I programs, that's what the $6 million is.
I think it's 6.9, right? The total Title I.
Yeah,
But
if you-
it all
special
falls
ed-
under Title I.
Title 1 through 4.
No, they have different titles.
Yeah, 1 through 3.
Title I,
One's Title
two,
I,
three, and four.
Title II, Title III, Title IV. There are different titles, and they're earmarked for different goals.
All right.
I have a question. I see a lot of the questions here are, we're talking about options with pre-K-4. And one of the options is to follow the criteria or eliminate the program. But there's nothing said about pre-K-3. Is that eliminated?
Mhm.
We're eliminating pre-K.
We're not, we're just putting that out on the table, we're not eliminating anything.
So
Yeah.
it's
This is all up for discussion.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm not in favor of eliminating 3-year-old preschool. I have to delve into the intangibles for a quick moment. As everyone comes up here and starts to make the financial decisions, and I said about 4 months ago, I felt like this year was gonna be harder than last year. And I think no doubt it's going to be. But one thing that I've always put my foot down, and maybe it's because I've seen it in action, but 3-year-old preschool to me, I just had my son Nathan go through it a few years ago. My son Jake is signed up for it, and it's hopefully gonna be starting it in September. And I've seen the growth, and I've seen the way that those kids are treated, and I know that we're in a part where we're in dire need for the ability to be financially solvent. That being said, I don't know if I'm willing in any circumstance to give up the opportunities specifically to my son or any other kids going into that program. And I think that the teachers that I've seen have done a fantastic job at preparing our kids for some of the most important things they're going to go through in life. They say everything's learned by age 5 or age 7, and I think that's true, and a lot of it happens because of those teachers in those schools doing that work. And there's a lot of financial reasons that go into my head to say, you should do this, get rid of it because it's gonna save us money, but I just can't be on board with this one, sorry.
And then there's another option, the option is to make sure those kids are serviced in the city in other preschools. So it's not necessarily that the school district has to take the burden of it, but using other organizations to help run that program is another option. It's not like we would say, we're not having a preschool program and therefore all children will sit in their parents' homes at age 3 and 4 years old. There are other ways that this could be addressed in the city.
This is a problem that, the overall problem here is money. And we're in a recovery program right now. Dr. Feynman is running this program. And that's why this program is so vitally important. I know I've been accused by other people, all you care about is money, you just talk about money, money, money. This is what money does. When you have the funds, if we were on a sound fiscal situation, this wouldn't be such a crisis issue, such an area, but we're not. And that's why the recovery program is so important, and that's why it's gonna take a little bit of time, and these are the consequences of not being fiscally sound and responsible. And this is why, that's why I'm here. That's the only reason I'm here. I don't understand any of the dialogue that just went on for the last 10 minutes. But I understand the financial obligations that we have to undertake. And it's gonna take a little while for us to right the ship and get in the right direction. We are trending in the right direction, but until we get to a sound fiscal stability in this district, these are the type of situations that are gonna keep hitting us over the head with. And it's sad, and it's something that you wish you could snap your fingers and correct the situation. And we're gonna do the best we can on this, but until we get our fiscal house in order, things like this are gonna keep happening.
I also think with all these decisions that are going to come our way and all these discussions with the recovery plan, that, and I believe our board is going in that direction, we need to be proactive, not to repeat the mistakes of the past, and to really analyze everything and make sure all our ducks are in a row. We have the legal opinions behind us, and we don't make rash decisions.
And they are great programs. I have 2 grandchildren that have gone through them, and it's amazing. I mean, you see what happens to the kids, and I mean, and both of them now. One of my grandchildren's in middle school. He's a tremendous report card, nothing like I ever got. And the other one is well on the way to the same type of situation, and it's imperative that we, as I said, we have to keep focused on this recovery plan. We have to keep, we're not gonna be able to chip away at it. We're not, well, let's not do this. Well, it's just gonna be painful. And we're gonna take all sorts of criticism for some of these decisions that we have to make. But they have to be made. They have to be made, and we have to keep our eye on the ball.
Now, we talked about in the PowerPoint where Title II and Title IV funding could be used for the preschool program. That was new news to us in the past week. But that money right now is being used, Title II and Title IV, to fund our crisis counselors, to fund our career coordinators in our career rooms, to purchase safety equipment, to pay for some professional development. So that,
4 teachers.
that 4 teachers,
Yeah.
4
Class size-
teachers.
Class size reduction teachers.
Class size reduction teachers. So that 2 and 4, we're using that to the max to relieve our general fund budget.
What they were saying is that it's allowable, it may not be in your best interest to use things that are already earmarked,
Right.
but it is something that is allowable, so we thought you should know.
So, going back to Mr. Duffy's comment, even if you stayed with the pre-K3 and pre-K4 program, because you're only servicing around half, 50% of the students, you still have to have the criteria. I mean, you
Yes.
can't ignore the criteria. You still have to have that economic and that academic criteria, so, for that program. I mean, you still can't continue it the way it is.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
Not fair, but that's a compromise that I'm willing to make.
And that's a criteria for the students as well as which schools you're picking.
Correct. Thank you.
Dr. Fine, did you plan on including recommendations for changes to the program as part of your recovery plan?
It may be in there, but because you have a monitoring coming up, this issue has arisen prior to
We have to take
the
care of it
plan.
sooner.
Yeah. I think you need to make some decisions.
On that note, Dr. Karen, will we be getting maybe a series of possible proposals with details and maybe dollar amounts?
We could
Coming
do
from-
that.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that,
we could flush out what was on the last 2 slides of different options you have.
yeah, so
We'll
we-
flush that out for you and get that to you, I think prior to the next, to the voting meeting, correct?
Yeah, I think you need that, because your monitoring's coming up. You need an answer prior to that monitoring. You don't want to be in jeopardy of losing the rest of it.
when is the next monitor scheduled?
May 14th and
Oh, so we have
15th.
to move very, very
Yes.
quick, okay.
So we're gonna have to do our homework, and I think I'm correct that this preschool program started in Scranton School District, if I'm not mistaken, back in the seventies.
In the 50 years
Wasn't it?
old.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, this is an important decision for us to look at. We can't take it lightly. We have to examine every single applicant.
Just one other thing, if you decide not to go with pre-K, it doesn't mean that's it forever. You know, the next year, you may be in a situation where you could bring back programs. So it's not a decision that, you know, ends.
At this particular.
It's a year-to-year decision.
Yeah, at this particular point, and it would affect more the pre-K 3 than the pre-K 4. At the end of this school year for them, basically, it's up for grabs for pre-K 4, is that correct? They're not automatically gonna be able to move from 3 to 4.
No.
Well, I think that if you are making the decisions and not having PDE make them for you after they sanction you and cite you, you could make some provisions where you grandfather some things in or come up with a way to gradually move from a 3-4 to a 4 or blend in or to meet the requirements. I think they
But if we
will.
lose the federal funding, all we have to do is come up with $6 million.
And usually what happens is the first time they come out and you're cited, you're given an action plan, and that's what happened last year. The second time when they come out and they find, you know, issues, they suspend your funds. And then they tell you how to fix it, as opposed to you coming up with a way that works for your community.
So we need some serious discussion on this and serious studying on this to get this done.
What do we think the timeline would be for a cost out of all of these options?
We have that
Yeah.
information. We could get that to you this week.
Quickly.
Yeah.
I hope it would include an option that continues 3- and 4-year-old preschool and brings us into compliance.
Yeah, we can put all options.
Yeah, we'll take what was
That should
on
be the
those
first
last
option.
two
I don't
slides.
know why we should be there last.
No, you said we have the criteria and we're using it, right? But we're not using it. We're
You're
doing the
administering.
test, but we're not using the
Why aren't we?
criteria for placement.
Yeah,
Why aren't we?
Because people are coming in when their child is, the day their child is born, and putting their child on the list.
So we're using first come, first
And
served.
so,
So that has to stop, that's the first.
that's what we need
Right, I mean,
from
that's,
you guys.
Moving to a
To be
six,
blunt, we need that so that we can make changes, because right now we were told you can't make any changes.
if you move to a 6-month window prior to them entering, then you're within regulations. Because attendance, you know, where you live has to be confirmed 6 months, your shots, things like that. All that happens within that 6 months. This way we're not bringing people back again and back again as they get the information.
but I think this is another idea, because we're supposed to have something in early May from Dr. Fine. I don't know how much this $2 million is gonna have to do with Dr. Fine's report. And it's around the time that the state comes out with their budget in June, shortly thereafter, and how much we're gonna get in additional educational funding. So like, these are all moving pieces that we're voting on. And to your comment, Mrs. McCarron, we need more information too. It's not just this last minute stuff, hey, it's against the law, do this. To me, I think we need about 10 things that I need to look at, and I have to be comfortable with those moving forward. And I can't just make this opinion now, and this opinion now, and this opinion now, and then the Scranton Times and everyone else is like, look what they did now. I gotta be honest, I'm tired of being a scapegoat. I'm working my tail off for 4 years, I'm not running again, could care less about anybody's vote, and I'm done with making decisions for any other reason than what I think is best for everyone. I've tried to do that the entire time, and I'm done with not having all the information that I need to make the decisions.
To be fair,
And to be
we
fair,
started these conversations last year,
I
last
know,
February.
and
And the
I'm glad
direction
you brought it up.
from the board was, we don't want anything to change. So we've been struggling
Right,
along with all of you as to how best to approach this.
so the best way to approach it is to maintain compliance and not change anything. And I know that's not the fiscally right idea,
That's not,
but
those are two contradicting
how?
statements.
How can we not come
The
into
selection
compliance?
process, Director
That's,
Duffy.
that's fine, but what I'm saying, use the selection process, use the educational pieces that you need, the economic pieces you need. To be quite honest, I'm sure that'll put my son out of contention for anything. But do it. as long as we keep it, as long as some kids can benefit, it's fine. Don't say, we gotta change this because, someone at the federal level is gonna cut our funding. We haven't been getting funding this entire time, and I'm pretty sick of the fact that it all leads back to us, because it leads to a bunch of other places, and it's uphill, not down.
So then definitely we'll have one of the options will then definitely be just a series of criteria, and as long as I'm understanding, economic and then academic.
That's right, Mr.
Okay.
Wordsworth.
So
The
that will,
opposite, it's academic and then economic. Academic always has to come first.
oh, okay, okay. Thank you.
So we will have this ready for them for their packet on Friday, if not sooner. And if it's sooner, we'll send it electronically to all of you.
Okay, now we have a discussion, thank you, everyone. We have a discussion resolution for the equity plan consent.
That you're gonna be, are you ready to discuss that now?
Is it in the
Okay.
packet? I'm assuming
Yes,
you
it's in the
received
packet.
So basically, this is an annual plan that comes in front of the board every year that you vote on. Because we choose to accept federal funds, we need to develop an equity plan. The plan must highlight the number of experienced teachers, experienced by, what that means is at least 3 years, versus novice teachers in the building. And its correlation must be the percentage of minority and low-income demographics within each building. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is this plan needs to ensure that our lowest achieving students are not being taught at a disproportionate rate by teachers who are inexperienced or not properly state certified. So that's what the plan will show. And you'll see there's a chart with the number of inexperienced teachers versus experienced teachers. And they basically are saying you can't take your lowest income school and put all of your inexperienced teachers in that school. And you can see.
This is something that occurs every year.
Every year,
Yeah.
yes, but we need it for monitoring.
And then the last thing is the discussion about the CTC budget.
That is in your packet with an explanation.
I apologize that I was not able to be at this month's meeting, so if there are any questions anybody needs me to look into, I'm happy to do that.
So pretty much the first page of what Mr. Thomas Bailey, Dr. Bailey's presented to you, the very first page gives you notes on what he wants you to pay attention to in this budget. So you have time to look it over. Barb, are you ready to move to operations?
Yes. Director Lesh?
Yes, there'll be a discussion with, for maintenance supplies and service bids.
I've asked Mr. Laffey to, in Jeff's absence this evening, to discuss what we're proposing here. Mr. Laffey?
Well, one of the areas that has been discussed in the past is the cleaning supply dispensing systems related to floor, window, degreasing, multi-surface cleaners. This time of year is when our annual bids do go out for art, general supplies, lumber, paint, etc. If this is something that we want to explore, I would like to get it into the bid spec this year. You know, these things tend to come up pretty quick, but some of the advantages that we've looked into are, you know, you have no upfront inventory carrying costs. You know, it would be filled on an as-needed basis. Those are some things that we've already kind of taken advantage of without implementing these dispensing systems. But, you know, we're purchasing on an as-needed basis now rather than carrying as much inventory as we used to with some of these items. From what I can tell, there's weekly monitoring where potentially the awarded company could come out and fill each system as needed. And from what I can understand is that some of these programs are pretty flexible in terms of meeting the needs of an individual district. hospital or organization for what we're exactly looking for. So is, I guess what I would have to do though is kind of delay the bidding of the specific cleaning supplies, just so we can gather some of the information and present it to the board. It would change our bid spec from how it's always been, basically.
How many chemical vendors do we have now?
Off the top, I can't answer that, Mark. I mean, we deal with, probably
Four,
at least
five?
4 or 5, yeah.
So, when you're saying you're gonna bid out the cleaning chemicals, you're gonna bid all of them out. Right, and then I understand what you're talking about, an OASIS system where they're dispensed, it's a lot more economical because no one's free pouring. When you have maintenance people free pouring stuff that's $35 a gallon, and that's a problem, where these dispensers really work, and I know that we don't have the burden of tying up all the product inventory, they come on to replace them. So each school's not buying a whole bunch of stuff just because they did in the past, or they think they did, or they might need it. I think it's a way to save a lot of money.
Well, we're not having every school anymore buy. We've put some controls in place.
Yeah, we tried to do it on more of an as-needed basis. It's not, well, last year we've always purchased 100 gallons of Windex. We're not operating that way. We're getting a price quote, and then as necessary, orders are placed at the schools. So that is a step that we've taken to kind of control some of those costs. This may take it a little bit further.
And then the dispensers, we're going to look into that. The district looked into it once before, prior to my arrival here, and they said it's extremely costly to have someone come around and fill. First you have to purchase the dispensers, then once a month, I believe, people come around and they fill them, and then there's training with the staff. So if a staff member would just, punch it once and a certain amount comes out, fine, but some of them, didn't do that, and they have some statistics to show that. So this district chose, prior to me arriving, not to go that route, but we're willing to look at it again based on some recommendations from the board. The other piece we'd like to look at, we'd like to go out with a bid for waste management and shredding, as opposed to trying to maintain the 2 vehicles we have. It's been extremely costly. Pat and I have been monitoring the cost of keeping those vehicles running and the landfill cost that we pay. So we would like to go out and get, or put out an RFP for those 2 services and see what we get back, whether or not it could be a savings to the district.
You're not also referring to recycling too, just.
Well, it's the recycling truck that they also use as the shredding also.
But they're still gonna recycle, is that, or no?
We are gonna recycle?
No, we pick up all the recyclables.
Yes, we
In
pick them
district.
up. We're
We're
going
gonna
to
still
look,
do that, or
we're
not?
going to look at
Okay,
going out for bid.
versus.
We
Yeah.
contract the service.
Yeah.
Now, what would happen to doesn't the state reimburse us for so much per ton, or per pound, or whatever, for our recyclables? Aren't we?
For our recyclables?
Right.
I'm not sure about that, Pat.
We do receive a very small amount of money each year. I don't think it was through the state though, Director Lush, but I will look into it for you.
Yeah, because I often thought that, like, the equipment would be bought through that, and, different things. I mean, that's what I thought the program was all about.
Let me do a little bit of research on that for you, okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Laffey, if I remember correctly, I think issues, either specifically the waste management and shredding, and I know we talked about recycling, but that was something I think we talked about the shared services committee meeting that you attended with Mr. Bolzoni. So I don't know if there's any
Well,
potential there at all.
what I've understood now from the city, and I think the mayor talked about it in the meeting that we attended with him, that they don't have the staff or the vehicles to take on our district.
Okay.
So I don't think it would hurt us in any way to go out with an RFP and see what we get back. And I really believe it might be something we'd want to consider. They put big dumpsters out in the back. our people have to go out twice a day. They would come out once a day. There's a lot of advantages to it. You're getting the trash outside of the building right away as opposed to keeping it close to the building when we have, our maintenance people trying to get around to all of the schools. And we've got a tremendous amount of trash.
I think part of the problem, Ms. Gilmartin, is the frequency in which we require people
Okay.
picking up.
Okay, good. Now that you say that, that rings a bell.
It was something that was every 2 days. We even needed, if the city was to do it, we needed it every 2 days.
Yeah.
Has that been brought to the city?
We can't afford to have them come every 2 days. We need trash pickup every single day because of the quantities that we have from our lunch program and everything else.
Has the, every single day been brought to the city?
Right now, we're doing it twice a day in all of our schools. We would not be able, the city would not be able to do it twice a day or once a day. And we can't keep trash on our premises because of the volumes to do it every other day. So that's why we'd like to go out with an RFP. So we'll be doing that and we'll be coming back to you with what comes in.
Okay.
So
And-
my take is that we didn't speak with the city about it.
I mean,
Is
when
that-
the
We did
issue
speak
came up,
to the city.
I do remember the mayor saying that there was an issue with staffing, that there weren't enough.
The city doesn't pick up the housing authority anymore. That used to be a thing, you used to do all projects and pick up there. You know, the bigger apartment buildings, they used to pick up there. It's all changed now. I mean, the city just can't afford to do it.
Well,
They
if
don't
they
demand
can't,
I was looking
I
to see
mean-
if we got a definitive answer from the city before we.
We did.
Definitely
Oh.
staffing was an issue. I am not somebody who ever thinks that's not a reason to pick up the phone again and say, hey, you didn't come up with another 15 people, did you? Who knows?
Well,
But-
then we have union issues here.
Okay.
but if they said they couldn't staff it every 2 days, they would definitely not be able to do it every day.
That's what we were told,
Right.
so.
Mr. Board, are we done with this?
Yes, we're gonna go out with RFPs and
Okay.
come back to you with what we get.
Director Borthwick, personnel?
We need a resolution to approve the personnel report, to approve retirements, assignments, appointments, leaves of absence, resignations, and a, labor relations resolution for employee settlement.
Okay.
Mrs. Dixon, I need to go back to operations.
Okay.
We have 3 vehicles that are at the stadium. They are on our inventory. We are
Okay.
paying insurance on them, and they're not being used. They're
Rotting.
they're just not usable, and we'd like to auction those off. Mr. Rowdy would take those vehicles and do the process for auctions, if that would be acceptable to the board.
Do we need a resolution for that, to vote on that?
You will.
So that can go on your, under buildings and grounds for your April 1st meeting.
Now, Director Borthwick, personnel.
All right, so just to reiterate, a resolution on approving the personnel report, retirements, assignments, appointments, leaves of absence, and resignations, and then a resolution for employee settlement.
Okay. Special Education Director Schuster?
There'll be a resolution to approve settlement agreements, and that'll be on the consent agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Vendor Relations Director McAndrew?
Yes, next Monday there'll be a resolution to approve the food service renewal.
Okay. Thank you. Policy Director Bill Martin?
We will have a resolution to approve second read policies 103, 103.1, 104, 222, 247, 249, 323, 707, and 904. And I do see that some of the policies that were on first read have come off. Is
Yes,
that accurate?
we're not, they are to do with grading and transcripts, and we're not completed with our work yet, so we do not want to bring them forward at this time. Is it the 01?
No. It ain't on there yet again.
We're gonna add
We're gonna
that
make it
on
on
there
there.
right now.
Right, very good, thank you.
01, yeah.
011, thank you.
011.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Thank you.